The following segment is sponsored by Northwest Honda Dealers.
You know, I hear people say things like, oh, they're stuck. And I think things like stuck are often like, I'm tired of hearing your story.
She's talking about how to deal with others' grief and how challenging it can be to navigate. For this week's Kind is Better story, K2's Genevieve Rayom looks at a program that opens itself up to the grief stories, especially grieving kids.
It's called the Dougy Center, and it deals with grief. Grief is a tremendously overwhelming emotion. Grieving anyone's death is challenging, but trying to cope with a suicide can be even more complex. I sat down with one high school teen and her dad. This is their story.
Oh yeah, that book I made you. You should show that.
This book is really awesome.
Stories of your mom.
This is her legacy.
A book filled with memories of Kari Grosswald's life.
Their wedding was an ultimate frisbee wedding.
And her struggles.
Yeah, I guess she drew that, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, I vividly remember asking the medical examiner, how do I tell my daughter?
Kari suffered from bipolar disorder. She took her own life in 2008. Her daughter Sylvia was just 5.
I felt really alone at my school for the first few years after she died because I didn't know anyone else who had lost a parent.
Is it hard though to feel like you can't talk about it?
Yeah.
Like you probably want to talk about her.
Yeah, sometimes I really do.
Shortly after her suicide, Sylvia and her dad Josh found the Dougy Center.
I wasn't alone. I wasn't different.
Grieving children fill these rooms.
It is a very child-led experience.
Connecting with similar people.
The groups are divided by age and who died and how they died.
The groups meet every other week for about an hour and a half.
I would say that in general, most of our families who've had a suicide death report that they do not get the kind of support from other people that families who've had a different kind of death have had.
While kids play through their problems, parents meet separately.
Hearing what their experiences and their thoughts and what they've been through, that's, I think, the most valuable thing, and that's the beauty of the model there.
For 7 years, the dad and daughter duo came here and worked through the pain.
What if I had just called in sick and stayed home, right? You know?
Like, well, what if I had said I love you to her one more time?
Here, they find ways to understand Kari's story.
And this was a ruler from when she was my age.
Oh, wow.
And learn how to continue theirs.
That's such a great picture of you, too, though.
It's one of my favorites.
Sylvia and Josh are just 2 of the people the Dougy Center has helped. The Dougy Center serves more than 500 kids and more than 350 adult family members a month. The center works hard to meet demand and has helped tens of thousands of people, but there is usually a wait list. In studio, Genevieve Rayom, K2 News.
Well, Genevieve also reached out to Judy's House, based in Denver. Judy's House created the Childhood Bereavement Estimation Model, or CBEM. With its psychologists pulled these numbers for us. In Oregon, 1 in 19 children will experience the death of a parent by the age of 18. In Washington, it's 1 in 22. Of those deaths, roughly 8% are intentional suicides.
There are grief groups across Oregon and Washington helping grieving families, and we're working on another story with a grief support center in Washington. Community Home Health and Hospice just recently finished this $3.5 million grief center. The community came up with the money to create it. The grief support groups are free, and there are specific groups for those dealing with suicide. In the coming months, we'll be telling the story of a family who found help here. If you want to talk to someone, you can call the National Lifeline 1-800-273-TALK. There are also numbers especially for kids. You can find all this information on kindisbetter.org.